Material for the brain. Conversations for thinking bodies. In this show, together with our guests, we explore different ways in which we can develop a meaningful relationship with our bodies and minds and respond to the current state of the culture in a quest for more integrated and embodied perspectives. Hello and welcome to Material for the Brain podcast. This is Matan Levkovich. My guest for this episode is Daphne Horenczyk, who has been here before. Daphna is a choreographer, dancer, teacher, and a mentor. Her artistic work is centered around the exploration of the gap between experience and representation. Her work has been funded by the city of Vienna and co-produced by different dance houses in the city. I invited her to the podcast to explore her current creation rage, in which Daphna examines how identity politics have shaped the art culture in ways that prevents artistic freedom and cultivates self-censorship and fear. The conversation took us to different territories. We talked about Daphna's personal experiences in Vienna and the culture and implication of language policing in the art. We explore the concept of bridging experience and representation in dance and how to move beyond being reduced to identity categories. We talked about the tension between professional integrity and systemic pressures. We explored the challenges of curation and the selection process that artists confront, and much more. I hope that you will enjoy the conversation, and if you live in Vienna and its vicinity, I can highly encourage you to come and see her upcoming work. You can see all the information in the show notes. And now I give you Daphne Horenczyk. Hey Daphna, good morning. How are you, my friend?
Good. How are you?
Excited. Nice to see you again in the podcast.
Thank you for having me again.
I invited you for a very particular reason, to speak about your upcoming project and discuss its implication and context. But before that, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm a bit stressed because the premiere is coming up, but it's sunny today, so I let it get in my body and calm me down.
Where's the stress coming from? Like a finishing touch of the performance, or?
I think I'm in this stress since weeks, so yeah, it comes from many directions that I guess we will touch in our conversation.
Okay, it's half a podcast, half a group therapy. How do you handle it? How do you handle the stress with the show? Is there anything that helps you, like from your practice, or you just accept that? Or
I feel like I get to an edge, and I recognize that, and then I freak out, so I calm down. I think that's the mechanism. It's nothing in particular. I practice yoga, but I always do. It's not more than.
Okay, and just out of curiosity, it's a little bit away from the main theme, but does it help you in any way, like to have other responsibilities? Like, because I feel that very often the fact that, we are both parents, we have kids, and sometimes for me just knowing that there is places I need to function just helps me to kind of function. Does it help you, or like?
Sometimes it does, and sometimes it makes it worse, I have to say.
Cool. So let's start rolling with the episode of today. And you've already been here, and I also invite the audience to check the previous episode we did together. But nonetheless, maybe you can take a short moment of introducing a bit yourself, your work, and kind of giving a bit of a bird's eye perspective about your practice for the people who are listening.
Yes. So I'm a dancer, performer, choreographer, teacher. I accompany creative processes. I'm a mother. And as a choreographer, I'm busy mostly in the gap between experience and representation since a few years. And my focus in the last years is quite a lot on the effect of social media on the body. And I grew up in Tel Aviv. I studied dance in Israel until I was 20. Then I moved to Salzburg to study in SID, where I met you. And I went back to Tel Aviv. I tried to make it there. 3 years later, I moved with my partner to Munich. We were there for 2 years. I tried to make it there. And then we decided to move to Vienna. That was already 7 years ago. And I'm making it here.
What does making it mean for you right now?
I don't know, being busy with my art, I guess.
And that's a good question to keep asking ourselves. Cool, thank you. So I'll put a bit of context for the listeners and also for us. So in your upcoming project, Rage, which you invited me to see, and I've been to some extent supporting you on different levels with it. You have started to address and deal with the topics of identity politics from a critical position, I would say. And that's something that I've also been involved in different ways through the podcast, through my teaching, and just generally in my life. And due to the importance that I think about this topic, that how important it is to have a discussion about it, I thought that it would be worthwhile of inviting you and diving into that. What is the project itself? What was the implication of it? And generally to open up the discussion about the context of working with identity in the arts and elsewhere. So maybe we can start by having a brief introduction to the project or inviting the audience to feel into what you're doing right now.
Well, this project is titled Rage, and it's not a work about rage, but it's work that comes out of rage, or it is rage. And my starting point was very emotional, and throughout the process I tried to articulate to myself what is it that I'm raging about these days. It has a lot to do with the disappointment of people around me, of the scene I work in, and of course it has ripples and it goes all the way to global politics. And my dealing with identity politics comes from the idea that somehow among the left, identity has become prior to any other value of professionality or personality, and it's being addressed many times in a very superficial way that doesn't really allow us to connect, and that's what I'm criticizing in my work. And my approach to that is to wear on myself all the possible identity groups I can be read through, aesthetically, but also the character that comes out of that, and trying to navigating through language that I hear around a lot, that I feel that is misused or censored, and that's where I'm poking mostly. So if I sum it up, it's language and symbolism that I feel that in certain contexts can be catalysts for discourse, but are being automatically cancelled and censored, with which I disagree.
And do you want to offer a bit more of a description of also what is happening on stage, or should we bring it when you feel it's necessary in the conversation?
Let's try to work with it organically.
Okay, cool. So maybe a good question that comes up in my mind now is, first you mentioned that the way identity is being addressed in the art scene, and I would say that maybe the art scene is just a reflection of what is going on in society, or maybe some artists would say that we are the the starting point, but I will doubt it a little bit. But you mentioned that due to this superficial way of handling identity, we are missing connection. It doesn't lead to connection. So maybe you can expand a little bit on that.
I can tell a story, a personal lived experience. I had a very good friend in when we were studying in Salzburg, who is black, and when I first moved to Vienna, my idea was, okay, in Vienna I have a network. I have a bunch of good friends who with whom I went through, difficult times in school, which I feel that is always a way to bond and get closer. And when I came to Vienna and I tried to connect with them, the reaction I got is, you cannot understand me as a person because you are white, woman, heterosexual. So I don't want to educate you. I don't have the energy to educate you. That was the wording. So I just give up on the friendship. And this was beyond hurtful. I just didn't understand how a person who would like to have equal opportunities in society push me away because of my color, my race, and my assumed sexual identity. I give myself more credit to empathize with people who experience hardship that I don't, because I don't know, in my values, humanity is kind of higher, right? And I give myself the credit to know how to see people beyond what they say. Yeah, how to read people.
Okay. And this experience was in contrast to a moment that you were connected to that individual?
Definitely. I felt we went through a lot of similar struggles throughout the academy years, which for me is more valuable than, I don't know, meeting another white heterosexual woman who is maybe Israeli and bonding just around that connection.
Yeah, yeah, it really makes me curious to understand, and that's something that I haven't come across a good explanation nor personal anecdotal testimony from anybody why those specific attributes of identity are so much more important than others, which in and of itself is a bit contradictory because it creates a certain hierarchy of values around identity, which part of my identity is more important than others, which I find it quite blunt because it can vary very much between individuals. I mean, I don't know, I think that just talking about myself, I can say that it also changes in my life. There were moments in my life that the fact that I'm a man was somehow very important. I remember when I started to dance, then it played a big role because it was kind of back then maybe it was a more uncommon choice. And so then it played a big role. But I don't know, since 7th of October, for example, being a Jewish plays much a bigger role in my experience as part of my identity. And sometimes being a father is much more important, and sometimes just the fact that I don't know, I have that kind of obsessive personality around stuff, so that plays a big role. So this is something I really don't understand. But what in this experience of being reduced, like what it made, like what in this experience became a catalyst for you to move forward and pursue it artistically? And maybe it wasn't only that experience, and maybe there are other broader things that in which you're anchored with your wish to go and make a performance that deals with that. Yes,
of course, it was not that experience that blew up everything. And I can say that moving from Israel to Europe, or back to Europe, knowing that I want to create my own work and I want to be busy with dance and with the body, this decision came from the thought that in Israel you cannot escape the political situation. You cannot create so much beyond the political situation. It infiltrates your work whether you like it or not, and the discourse is so intense, and I didn't want that necessarily. Only to realize that when I come to Vienna, I'm expected as an Israeli to be busy with the Israel-Palestine conflict. And it put me in this in-between place that, okay, I didn't want to deal with it, so I came here, and here I'm expected to deal with it. And I'm just confused. What happened to just the integrity of what I'm interested in as a person, not as the list of identity that I can give.
Yeah, and then it begs again the question: why do we choose different topics? Why specifically as an Israeli you are expected to do this, but if you would been I don't know, if you wouldn't been Israeli, maybe you would be expected to do certain work about your gender, or maybe if you would have been born in the South, you would be expected to do about your race. So why these expectations are there? Do you have any intuition? Like, why is there some? Let's say if you really try to stillman these curators and say, like, do you think that there is some truth in that perspective?
I have an assumption to what happened there. How did we get there? I think the academy is a great source for ideas especially in the progressive left, and its implication often is through the art. So since the big migration crisis in 2015 in Europe, the discourse around migration led to a discourse around neo-colonialism and gender studies just started to rise as a topic also in the academy, and it all blended and kind of shaped the vocabulary in the art scene. That's how I see it.
And okay, so you arrive here and you feel like that you have these expectations. Did you fulfill some of these expectations, or you always try to stay focused on your own interest and artistic integrity, or you felt that, okay, I have no choice but I have to compromise in order to be part of the scene here?
I definitely didn't compromise.
Okay.
I was questioning, where does the Israeli identity appear in my work? And I can answer this for myself, but I don't know if you or others can see it. I can totally see it, how growing up there, dancing there is evident in my body of work, but it's not. It was never something I want to explicitly talk about through art.
Okay, now a question that, again, it's not a criticism, but I'm trying to dig deeper. Okay, so of course there is let's say, your personal circumstances, and you're an Israeli artist, and there is these expectations. But as far as I know and aware of your own practice, I also know that the criticism doesn't come only from the lack of opportunities that it implies on your specific case, but that there is a certain rejection that is more fundamental that pushes you to do this kind of work. Because, when I'm hearing the first critique that that comes in mind, okay, she doesn't want to do it just because it places her in a disadvantaged position in her own personal case. But as far as I'm aware, there is something more fundamental that bothers you, that maybe is associated to this experience when somebody tells you, I'm sorry, you're white, you can never understand me. So what is that?
I think it's exactly what I'm busy with in the last, I don't know how many years, almost 10 years, the gap between experience and representation. And when I'm reduced only to what I represent in your mind, I cannot stand it.
Yeah, okay, let's dig on that, because that's the interesting stuff. Talk about it. What is this gap? Where did you start recognizing this gap? How did you deal with it artistically, practically, and what is it for you?
I think I always had this problem, quote unquote, of not wanting to be defined as X. So whenever I feel someone defines me as something, I have to kind of move away from there to divert, to show, no, I'm more than that. I'm also that. I'm this, but I'm also that. And I'm also that, and that, and that, and that. And that's my practice in life, in communication with people, and definitely in my dancing, in my approach to my body, and in the way I create. That's what challenges me, and that's a mechanism that I recognized a couple of years ago, that's how I operate. And I say it's a problem because it also doesn't really allow me to belong to one community, because as soon as I'm defined or located somewhere, I have to move away.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is kind of a certain need because I can identify very much with that, a certain need to be recognized for who I am, which is a very complex compositions of many layers, and some of them are rooted in identity, and some are also not rooted at all in identity. And I think that, but nevertheless, I was just thinking about a moment that kind of jumped in my mind now when we were talking, and a bit I'm playing devil advocates just in order to push our conversation. That I remember when I was 18, I was recruited to the IDF, and I had my own struggle with that reality, but nonetheless I decided to do it. And back then my father, he had a nursery in which several Palestinian men were working for him. And back then it was kind of not that complicated. It was not that complicated for people to work in Israel. And
for many years.
Yeah, but it was kind of it wasn't a good period, because I don't know if there has ever been a good period, but relatively it was a good period. And I remember that the first time I came home and I visited my father's nursery, I really felt that one of the workers, something changed the moment he saw me wearing uniform. I wasn't Matan anymore. I was a representative of the Israeli army for him. And he didn't have any severe extreme experiences that would trigger that. But nevertheless, that's it. For the moment, I was not anything but that. And I also remember that during my service in the army, there were many moments that I had conversation with people in the field, and I was trying to break through the layer of identity and to meet on a certain thing that maybe we call a human level. But I did feel that it's a very, very difficult thing to overcome. And then it begs the question, okay, so let's say if we take the example of your black colleague, so can you place yourself in their eyes and see, like, what do you think is needed to overcome that? Because obviously we are both not naive about the fact that group identity exists, and we do have the minds that wants to categorize and box people. If I walk in the street and I see somebody, my mind will analyze and put some labels. But what do you think that enables you to go through that and get in touch with people?
I think first is the realization that the mind is working like that. The mind needs order, and order means to put things in categories, in boxes, to understand that a table is a part of this larger group of furniture, right? It's not just a floating term. And once I accept this and I recognize how I react, I can question it, I can transcend it, I can give in to it. I have a relationship with that. But if I'm not aware that that's the process that is happening, I have no relationship with it, and I cannot react differently than to only see people as representatives of certain groups.
And yeah, because I on one hand I feel that it's such an intuitive thing to do that I almost don't understand why it's even a topic. It feels for me almost like, hey, of course we all see each other's to some extent through the lens of identity, but then we do the simple process of being in a dialogue, and then we overcome those barriers. So it's very puzzling for me, why is it even a topic that, for me, it always begs the question of what's the motive behind it? Because for me, there is a certain point I stopped seeing it as a I stopped believing the words around this discourse of care, equality, dissolution of hierarchies. I stopped, like, for me, it's already, I feel like these words have just been misused to achieve something else.
Yes, but I think what it's trying to achieve, or I think if we go a bit deeper into what is bothering us, Matan and Daphna, is the way that through identity politics, the lens gets even narrower into looking at systematic oppression of marginalized groups. So it's not generally I put you in this category or that category, is how am I constantly being oppressed, you know, and what are the means I need to use in order to fight this oppression, fight for emancipation. And the way I see it now, with the progressive movement, is by policing language.
Yeah, definitely that's very present. Yeah, I mean, I would even say, and maybe this is where we will disagree, because I think that to some extent, and maybe that's due to our personality differences, I have a very harsh stance around it. I really feel like I need to have very clear boundaries around this discourse, and I think that you have the ability to give people a little bit more the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it also relates to our experiences, because I definitely didn't start in the position I am. But I feel that it boils down to power at the end. I mean, that at the end it's a desire to frame certain to use altruism in order to gain power. So it's a little bit like, you know, like you're a wolf in disguise of a sheep. You come with a certain clarity that, okay, I mean, because this word is being used very often, you know, like you're in a position of power. I remember, you know, when I came to Vienna, and the first work I've done, I was collaborating with an artist here in Vienna, and then I decided to do another project by myself, and I had the intuition to do a work that will to do a duet that I will not perform, and it will be about dealing with the topic of sexuality, and I wanted to work with a female dancer and a male dancer. And then the curator told me, hey Matan, I think you will be roasted here in Vienna if you do such things. After all, you're a man, you're in a position of power. If you want to comment on female sexuality, it's very problematic. And back then, you know, I was very naive, because I just graduated from SEED, maybe a year after graduation, you know, where we both know that in this academy there is not so much emphasis on discourse and intellect. And for me, I just kind of took it at face value and said, okay, yeah, I am in a position of power, yeah. Like, I just agreed with all these things without actually questioning the meaning of it. But I think that it really requires a deep question. Like, it really requires questioning what does the term power means in that context. Because as far as I'm concerned, it feels for me that in the dance field, we use this term, and I think that's also elsewhere. I don't think it's limited to the dance field. We use this term in order to allow ourselves to claim power. So if I'm saying something like, as a white person, you're in a position of power, therefore you should step back and listen. What is actually happening is that I've created a moral hierarchy in which there is no way you can come out good. Because if you agree with me, you give your power. If you disagree with me, then you don't recognize your position of power, therefore you're perpetuating. Right. So then that's catch-22. You have no ability to choose. I put you in checkmate. And for me, that feels very dishonest.
I totally agree. Plus, what about the actual content that you can share? Your knowledge. Not as a white man, your knowledge as Matan, who lived on this earth for certain years and professionalized in dance. What about that? How come it's so easily erased and cancelled? And you know, I'm bothered with this question very often, because I realize that I get along with men better than with women, especially around work. I do. What can I do about it?
Thank you for sharing your bias online.
No, yeah, but it took me also time to admit to myself. I'm like, I try to think, who are my friends? Who are the people I feel close to? Who are the people I trust? 90% men. And now when you ask, when you fill in an application for grants for the city and for the state, there is a question of what is the percentage of female and male in the project, and I always feel so bad when it's not equal. But I'm the leader of the project. I have, I have way more weight than the 3 men that I'm working with. You understand?
Yeah. Also, it's a little bit contradictory, because if let's just take this example. If in the case of, it's hard even to use the word gender, because that's already puts us in a very confusing territory. But let's say, if we want to balance it based on sex, so you need to have certain amount of females and certain amount of males, because we want to empower females that have been marginalized and they don't have power, and we want to make sure that they get opportunities. Therefore, when a female choreographer chooses with whom she wants to work, isn't that an expression of female power, because she's in the position of authority to choose? No, sorry, you have to confirm to...
That's my point.
Yeah, it's quite ridiculous, no?
But that's what I mean by going automatically with some terms or with some symbols, instead of I don't know, really implementing the ideas that are behind that.
And what are those ideas for you that you think that could be implemented, that they are not superficial?
I grew up in the 90s in my Tel Aviv bubble. There was the palace of the intellectual left, when the left was in government. And
who remembers that?
Ages ago. Yeah, but I really remember clearly that the values of the education system when I grew up, when I was in elementary school, were accept the other, see the other as thyself. Not I accept the fact that they are other than me, which was the transformation in the 2010s in the education system in Israel, but it doesn't matter. To have an open, honest conversation with manners, derech eretz, right? Like, so
good faith conversation.
Good faith conversation. Not necessarily holding one truth, allowing people to live with their own beliefs. Coexistence. These are all terms that have vanished. Values that are really not relevant anymore. And I'm sorry, it's hard for me to accept the fact that my life view is not relevant anymore.
Yeah, and and since we are both I mean, I'm 41 and did you offer your 40 birthday or like next year?
Thank you very much. I just turned 38.
Okay, sorry. So, but you know, I think we are in the same age range where you start recognizing, I have already values that I want to conserve, which I think most people, when they arrive to this age, unless you've all your life really living in the margins, and that's another maybe question, like why that happens to different people and how much it's systemic and how much it's of an individual thing. So I think you start to develop certain things that you feel like, no, this is not something to just play with and toy and throw away. So you start to develop some conservative intuition. And I think when I was young, for me, the word conservative equaled close-minded, asshole, whatever, bigotry. And now I look at it very differently because I realize, no, actually there are things that are important for me and they're worthwhile defending. But yeah, I think that there is a certain trickiness in the request that you're bringing, but I think it's worthwhile exploring it, that if we are standing for the acceptance of diversity of opinion, therefore we should just accept all these opinions that are babbling. Because saying, look, these opinions are too crazy, would kind of moves us away from our initial path that we want to encourage people to hold their positions and to enable a good faith conversation. But I think, and maybe that's my intuition, and maybe you have a different one from your experience, the reason I feel like it doesn't apply to this specific discourse that emerged from identity politics is that it doesn't play by the rules. It's a little bit like if I invite you to play basketball and I say, hey, these are the rules of the basketball, let's play. And then you say, like, fuck off, I'm just gonna do whatever you want. And if you don't agree to me doing whatever you want, you break the rules. But it's already the rules were broken. Right. And then I cannot converse with you anymore because everything that I'm saying is being redundant to the fact that, you say it just because you're white. No, maybe that's my opinion. And maybe I did think a lot about everything you're saying, but still I didn't agree with you, not because of interest, just because I have a different perspective. And I think that's a very, very tricky way of handling professional and personal connection. I don't know if anybody actually can live like this on a personal level.
My question is, what are the honest intentions in this act? Are we aiming for a society that has an open conversation, that is not judgmental, which is kind of what postmodernism offered? Or we say, yeah, you are with me or you are against me. But if you are not aligning with me 100%, then, I will see you as a racist, homophobic, queerphobic, transphobic, and aligning with the far right. So, that there are no shades.
Yeah. But it's also, for me, another question that it begs, and maybe that's kind of boils down a little bit also to what you mentioned in kind of in a circular way, to what about professionalism, is that at the end of the day it begs the question, like, okay, how do we understand reality? Because if you say to me, okay, you cannot understand the oppression that I'm experiencing because you don't have the same experiences. And that's definitely to some extent true. I don't have the same experiences, but also two people with the same circumstances will have different experiences. And then, like, how do we measure it? How do we know what is happening? Is it important to include all the different experiences of different people from different marginalized groups to understand the reality? Is it important to have certain statistics about it? I mean, my take on it is that it's just that there are different problems that needs different solution. And I think it's a very different thing if I live in South Africa under apartheid and there are rules that says that as a black man I'm not allowed to sit in a certain row in a bus. That's one problem. And it's a different problem if I live in Vienna and I'm a black man and a police officer stops me to check if I have an ID and I don't feel safe in that situation and I feel like maybe I'm being racially profiled. It's two different problems. One has very, very clear evidence that you can say, look, it's written in the law. And one is like, it's happening on this ambiguous level that I'm working on the level of interpretation. And I think that the discourse guides you to have one particular interpretation all the time.
Right.
And this is, I think, for the individual, it's so pathological because like you're always trapped in seeing the world as this hostile place that is always rigged against you. And I'm thinking, because
and that's where you look for solidarity with people who have the same experience on that level.
Exactly.
And then, you know, but that's, I'm sorry for the very politically incorrect word, but that's hysteric, you know. That's a hysterical reaction. Like, the world is hostile, I have to find people who feel like me, so I feel safe. Like, yes, but you can also grow some resilience, yeah. You can decide that you talk softly to these people and talk to their heart and maybe change their mind with how they look at you. And this is, I'm going circular back to what you said, this is maybe my approach that is a bit what you call softer rather than giving clear boundaries, which would be your reaction.
Not initially.
No. Yeah.
I got to the point, you know, I think, you know, like, fair enough. I do feel like that I've made a lot of effort to be in conversation with people I disagree, because initially I was just stunned and shocked by, you know, like, what, do really people feel like this and think like this? Like, I just couldn't understand it. But yeah, I think it's you know, I can definitely empathize on an individual level, and maybe the experience of living through the challenges that occurred to us Israeli Jews after the 7th of October, of this kind of rise and this epidemic of anti-Semitism. So I have my share of lived experience of feeling unsafe due to my identity, even though that in this context we will not be maybe recognized as marginalized, but that's another conversation. Yes. So I can empathize with that, and to be honest, I think that I also told it to several people that, you know, like that it made me feel like I should have been more sensitive with how I communicated with people around the incident of George Floyd and my criticism to the Black Lives Matter discourse, in the sense that, like, yeah, timing is important and the choice of words if you wanna be heard is important, but nonetheless, as a strategy for the individual, it's just running 100 miles straight to the wall if you don't question the filter from which you observe the world. It's just, for you, it's catastrophic. You cannot live like this without getting mad. It's just super unhealthy. And that's why, I think that's what creates the fragility, that people feel like if you question anything about that experience, I'm gonna melt, and that's why I don't have any conversation with anybody that question even an inch of my experience, because there is no space for internal dialogue. And it's tricky because, you know, like I'm also asking, like, okay, what is the boundary between questioning yourself and being gaslighted by the situation, you know? Because maybe there is let's say a very racist police officer, and he just he uses his power to just harass black people in Vienna. I have no doubt that there is at least one person like this in Vienna, for sure. Like, what are the chances that not? There are assholes all over the world, and for sure also in Vienna. And then it's like, okay, what is the degree that I want to take that I'm taking responsibility, and what is the degree that I'm just kind of, self-punishing myself and gaslighting myself about the fact that there is somebody who is actually wants to fuck me up, and I'm kind of entertaining the possibility that it's not so.
If you enjoyed the conversation so far and found it meaningful, please consider to share the episode with others and to click the like button. These small actions might seem meaningless, but they are the fuel that helps the podcast project to move forward. Your attention and time is highly valued, and we would love to hear more about the insights you might have from listening to this episode. And please consider to subscribe to the channel to be notified for all future uploads.
I agree. And I would take us a bit in a different direction, saying I'm not saying there is no systematic oppression for marginalized groups. I mean, obviously the world keeps showing that there is, but I believe that the way to deal with it is, according to my values, is very wrong. It is perpetuating this power dynamics instead of saying, no, we are beyond that. We see the systematic oppression, and here where there is actual apartheid, we use certain tools to oppose it, and when there is different סממנים, attributes of systematic oppression, when it's something that is like interpersonal, we use different means. We don't block the conversation as soon as we hear something that can hint something that we heard that is somehow connected to that language of systematic oppression. You know what I mean? So for me, it's more the way, the means, the tools that are a problem rather than the actual problem.
Is this your goal with Rage, to expose this perspective of like what?
Yes, definitely. Because I use ridiculing and mockery as an artistic tool. That's one of my artistic tools that I use. But I don't mock the content. I'm not saying, people of color are ridiculous. I'm mocking the way that Western white people advocate for marginalized groups, and by that they're clearing themselves from the guilt of their ancestors. You understand what I mean?
No, I understand. You want to separate between the way of handling, the way of delivering the discourse around it, that which by now is not, it's not necessarily only white Westerners. It's just, I would say that it's the best way to know if somebody will be in this discourse is kind of political orientation, and I think there are some other cues that maybe it's funny enough, but if you ask somebody what's your opinion on COVID, that can give you a hint. If you ask somebody what is your diet, that can give you a hint. If you ask somebody what do you think about climate change, that could give you a hint, because there is some clusters of information that is being kind of delivered under the same umbrella. and I think that.
But can you hold different positions on different topics? That's a question.
That's a question. Yeah, that's a question. And
can I think that the COVID vaccine is a conspiracy of the pharmaceutical
industry?
Yeah, and still believe in climate change?
You know, I think that it is becoming harder. The theory that I heard about it is something called egregore theory, which, even though my understanding of it is kind of low resolution, but imagine that the way we transmit information nowadays is mainly through social media. And even what is called legacy media is operating within social media. So it's everyone is connected there. Twitter or X, Facebook, whatever, Instagram. And within this system, we act as neurons that transmit signals by liking or sharing. Let's leave all the complexity, but basically you have like a on-off button. You like, you dislike. You ignore or you paid attention. So you act as a neuron in something that we all together create a certain brain. And the egregore is this brain, and the egregore theory says that, look, there is different egregores that are competing on attention. And by the different signals we do, we disperse the information within that egregore. So if I'm very much associated with certain opinions, I have the proclivity to be exposed to other things that are linking me to that egregore. And within that egregore, it will be very, very difficult to find things that will completely counter my perspective. So if I'm not actively trying to come out of my egregore, it's not going to happen. And that's something that I keep asking myself, because I also see this slippery slope happening to me, you know, like that, okay, you know, I'm starting from a certain position, and then I see, but actually I don't agree with this, I don't agree with that, and I have the reaction to this. And I feel it like maybe, I don't know, in my particular case where I see a very big gap, and that relates to what you said about not feeling belonging, is that in the last years I became much more aligned with a lot of conservative values on the level of opinions. But on the level of lifestyle, I've still stayed pretty much in the same place of the, let's say, on the edge of the progressive left, and what I'm looking for experience. And you know, like, I don't think that a typical, let's look at somebody who's in the conservative right in the US will be attracted and will have the life circumstance to end up doing a naked wrestling performance of 2 hours on stage. No, it's just not going to happen probably. So I find myself like that. My opinions goes in different direction, but my behavior is still I'm still very attracted to the same things. I still really enjoy exploring myself and my body through dance and connecting to people in this informal, in this non-verbal way, and digging into consciousness and connection. And these things are anchored in the values that you said. But somehow the values have shifted. So I feel like I haven't changed a lot. The values have shifted.
Yes.
And then I'm a bit like, I feel a bit homeless.
The values have shifted, and also there were major life events that happened in the meantime when you were kind of establishing your set of values, you know, I don't know, in your 20s, for example. In between, you know, Trump was elected once. Who would have thought, you know? This does not align with anything we have known until that moment. 7th of October, of course.
COVID was a big
COVID.
thing.
Yeah, many major things have happened in a very short period as well. And I think, first of all, I think no one has the capacity to digest all that and come up with an elaborated opinion about what's going on, and or a position. And then, of course, we social media forces us to form an opinion and be in a position and align ourselves or connect ourselves with this tribe or that tribe. Yeah, I lost my my thought.
It's okay. Actually, I do want to bring us a little bit back to the actual work. So maybe you can kind of, I think it's a good timing to really kind of, so what are you doing there, and why do you think it matters? And not philosophically, but like why, on a strategic level, what you're doing on stage and what do you hope to achieve with that? That's maybe a better question, because why it matters we kind of discuss. So what are you doing, and what do you expect it to do in the world?
As I said, I wear all these identity symbols.
On the level of costume.
On the level of costume and objects. I don't know how much I want to spoil, but I think I have to for the sake of the conversation. But I wear fake body parts to caricature myself in different directions. Let's keep it like that. Which is already uncomfortable to see and can be read as provocative. And I was asked often, why do I have to use provocation in this work? Which leads me to the second question that you have. And I feel we are at this point that if you don't go all the way to the extremity, you cannot start a conversation. Because what this language policing that I mentioned before does is it creates a conversation that is always trying to go around and never to hit the actual point, because that can be offensive. Yeah, but I believe that my audience can take responsibility for themselves. We are grown-ups and we do live in this hostile world, and we get offended every day. And I understand you don't come to the theater to get offended, but as an artist, I also feel that my work is supported because someone wants to know my take on life and on the world nowadays.
So, trying to shed light on how language is being controlled and policed in order to encourage a different type of conversation between artists?
Between people,
between
yes.
People. And do you have any? Do you think that there is other implication that this work could do? Specifically in Vienna, I mean, let's be realistic. We are working in a small art scene, but as far as I'm concerned, what you're doing is really like putting a minefield and pressing the red button. Not because I think that what you're doing is so radical, is because the degree of
sensitivity.
It's not even sensitivity, because sensitivity is something that I see as something. I value sensitivity. I think it's good to be sensitive because many things are happening on a level that is very
oversensitivity. Yeah,
like there's certain granularity that I want to have when I experience life, but I feel that it's not self-censoring is not sensitivity. Right. So you if people come, and I think that's what it happens. You come and you're playing the role of the there is this story about the kid who sees that the king is naked. Yes. You are shouting, "Hey guys, the king is naked! Like, what are we doing here?" And you do it with you are testing the boundaries of the scene, because you are doing something that is to some degree, as you say, provocative, but it's also very comical. Like, it's, at least for me, I think that there is certain
comical elements, and you are being the how you call in the court there was the role of the court's not clown. I forgot the ליצן החצר. The court.
Like Hella Queen.
Yeah. Anyhow, the court clown or whatever the term is in English, that it's kind of coming and kind of making something. Hey, can we take this not so seriously? And then if you're going to be executed, then we can know no, the sin is tyrannic.
Yes.
If you won't be executed, then we know okay, there is hope. And did you get some encouragement from others or like colleagues that kind of because I'm saying it because my experience was that every time that I came out with certain let's say controversial opinion on Facebook, there was always people who said like thank you for talking.
Yes.
There's always the people who appreciate it but don't have the courage to publicly stand behind you. So
yes, I get that. I feel to a certain degree, and I will try to stay humble about it, but I do feel that I am representing a voice that people are too scared to represent because there is a lot at stake. And I put my fucking career at stake. I'm totally aware of it. It's exactly what you described. I put this bomb to see whether I can continue or not continue working in this field, because the way that it is now, the amount of things I have to take under consideration before I even think about my artistic integrity is unbearable, which makes me not wanting to work in this scene. Yeah. So I'm actually doing this work in order to make the work that I want to do.
Yeah, actually, this is something, I have a different story, but for this exact reason and other life circumstances, I chose to stop applying for money in Vienna. I felt that like under this political climate and discourse, I cannot do art and stay honest with my interest, and yeah, I find it courageous because I think that like nowadays I feel like that very many people again conflate between your the identity that you were born into or to some extent adapted, because some identities are fluid and some identities they are just you're born into. So people are kind of getting credits for that. Oh, you're so brave because you're queer, or you're so brave because you're black, or you're never brave if you for being
for being brave.
For being brave.
For working hard and
yeah.
Exposing your
exactly, and I think
organs out there.
And I find it again misusing the word bravery, because for me at the end of the day, bravery is just a measurement of the amount of risk you're willing to take, and risk equals the implication of your action. If I'm working in Vienna and then I declare to the world that my pronouns are this and that, and I'm identifying as a queer artist, I'm not risking anything. On the contrary, I'm positioning myself in a place that now I can claim certain amount of privilege.
Yes.
So that's why I feel like that. For me, when I heard that you decided to do this work, I felt like, and also comically, you said like how you say, like dropping the mic. Kind of.
Yes.
I felt like, hey, I'm definitely gonna have your back because I know you're gonna be receiving. There's gonna be some shit show.
It's already happening. This whole process is a shit show, and the fact that I'm sitting here smiling it's a miracle. That's bravery. But
no, but jokes aside, I think like I do want to say that I think that it's in that regard, And I think that maybe that's also something that binds us together. And again, I'm arriving it from a bit from the back door. I think we don't have a choice, because I think that in our particular identity, and that's something that took me a long time to understand, and I'm a bit, I wouldn't say angry, but I'm kind of feeling a little bit, how could I be so ignorant? We don't have a choice, because the moment we with our particular identity as Jews, when things goes to the edges, we lose our ability to be a part. And I think that that's what is happening on the left, and that's maybe why we have this feeling, at least that's the intuition that I'm developing, that at the end it somehow boils down to that. And it's a topic maybe for another conversation. I'm considering to do a panel with many other Israeli Jews artists working. So I feel it's like I'm a bit being compelled to do that, because I don't, at the end, they say like, I'm doing it because I want to do my work. And that's so it's not really a choice. It's almost like a necessity. But what would be the work that you would do in the world where you don't need to, where there is real artistic freedom that is not bound by your political presupposition? What would then be your pursuit right now?
Shall I reveal my fantasy for the next work that might not happen?
Your choice.
No, I'm very interested in unisono, in dance. And I don't know if you remember, but already when we were in Seed, I did this duet that was trying to get a perfect unisono, also on an emotional level. With Luan and Linda. And since then, something there is still it's still itching me, and it gets clearer and clearer what is my request there, or what is my interest there. But I could never really frame it in the political climate or
justify
it. So I never really went deep into it, but somehow in my teaching I kind of explored it or came back to it, and the word community came up quite, community, commonality. So that's where I am, but I feel that, with everything that goes on, I don't have the so-called privilege to be busy with that, to actually take the skills that I crafted in 20 years and apply it in a, let's say, clean, sterile situation, lab situation.
It's a bit tricky that I guess that the ideal setup never exists anyhow, but on one hand it's very beautiful that there is a system of funding in Vienna. On the other hand, it's also obvious that this system of funding is attached to a political structure, so therefore it cannot be politically neutral.
Yeah, and it's highly monopolized. That's also a problem.
What do you mean by that?
That you can do work in Vienna only if you are approved by these 3 people who sit there and it's there are not so many other possibilities.
Yeah, well, but this is I think you are in this pool of people. I used to get funding, and so I think we are both speaking not from a resentful place of not getting any funding, but I think it's a problem, and I didn't hear any. I mainly hear criticism from people who don't get money, or see around people who are criticizing this, like why there is no more equal opportunity. But I think it's just very difficult.
But it's not about equal opportunity, or it's not about me being bitter of why don't I get the opportunity. I was there for many years and I worked fucking hard to be one of those who get funding. Hopefully not for the last time, but let's see. But I see the injustice happening. I see great artists that the quality of what they're doing and the themes that they are exploring are. It's hard for me to say objectively, but even if it's not my taste, I can really appreciate the craft and their passion. That people who come with this preliminary with this sorry with these identities that they didn't choose to have, and don't have half of the passion than these people who work hard and not get supported, and that they get supported. This injustice is really bothering me.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't use the word injustice there because I think it's a bit too loaded, but for my taste. But it begs the question, and it brings it back to maybe what you said, like what about professionality, what about competence? And that's a big problem to address in the art. I mean, for some people, it will be first to just deal with the initial problem of acknowledging that there is certain competency and that it's not just arbitrary power, because the moment I tell you, hey, you just got the work, you just got in that position because you're a man, then I'm questioning the fact that competence exists. No, it's not about what your skill, it's just because you're a man or just because you're that. But also asking it but it also applies to the position that we are this look, okay, and for me that's one of the motivators why not to base funding on identity, because then it brings me the question, wait, did he get the money because he's good or just because his identity? So it kind of forces me to be a little bit, it funnels me towards bigotry, because then I'm like, I keep having this question, wait, why do these people get money? I mean, I'm saying this voice personally. I'm not so much anymore in the scene, so I don't even care.
But you see it in many other fields as well. That I'm very involved or interested in Israeli politics, and you can really see it now with the Supreme Court, with the president of the Supreme Court. There is the whole question around is it a political appointment, or is there competency, or is it only seniority? All this it's everywhere.
No, but it's a big problem to solve, because you do have limited amount of resource, and you need to have some funnel in which many people enter and only few come out, the lucky winners of the funding system. And I think that there is no perfect way to do it that will actually measure competency, because
I also know there
are no agreed criteria.
Yes, and also now the criteria around saying, okay, so these are Western criteria for competency, but what about all the knowledge that comes from other parts of the globe? Yeah, okay, but maybe it's me thinking. Maybe it's me, and I see myself as someone who has hypersensitivity to people's intentions, and I cannot be so easily fooled by that. And I can see where there is passion, interest, hard work, and it is not just something that is politically hyped, right?
Yeah, just riding the wave of popularity.
Exactly. Opportunism.
It's tricky. I must say it's tricky, because I think no matter what you do as a curator, your role is to disappoint many people and to make few people happy. And unfortunately, and that's what I love about sports, that you can measure it. You can just, you can put one team against the other, you test it, and in this day we recognize that you are better, and that's it, the debate is done. We've made the test, but unfortunately you cannot make it with the arts. Even though that, again, I also don't think that it's only subjective. I think that there are acquired tools and ways to measure things. But my experience with working in Vienna was always that the most important thing is personal connections more than competency. When I moved to Vienna, I made an effort to connect to all the dance houses and all the people who hold spaces for dance production, and I got in touch with Anita Kaya from Inflieger, and I initiated a collaboration that I supported her with a project that she's been running for years that is called Changing Spaces, that they switch artists between different countries. And I connected her with a group of people. I thought that there would be a good reciprocity in Israel, and this project was successful. So we developed a working relation. So then when I applied to a residency, there was already like, yeah, of course I want Matan to be here because I really appreciate him as a person and I see how hardworking he is. But did she knew anything about my artistic practice? Not so much. She read the concept, it sounds good. We also got some residency before, part of an impulse dance thing, so that was working. And that's why I feel like that at the end, that's why it's always a bit resentful, because it's about yeah.
Yes, but okay, as a curator, of course you have to take risks. That's what you do, you know, in order not to only stay safe with things you know and not giving the newcomers or younger generation opportunities. And basing your climbing up the scale on personal connections, this happens everywhere. And of course, as a curator, you need to develop an intuition to people.
Yeah,
no,
I mean,
and to see are they manipulative? Are they opportunists? Do they have good intentions, malintentions? You know, are they here to take advantage of the resource that I can give? And I mean, I also happen to sit in some juries to select artists for different programs, and that was the level of conversation. But I feel that as you get higher in power, you lose these criteria somehow.
Yeah, maybe also it's always, and also, you know, I do give people the benefit of the doubt, and there are for sure many other factors that we cannot process when you are in that position. You know, I do remember when I was a student in the dance school, I thought many things, and now when I'm directing a school, I think differently. So obviously, you know, the being in the position, grappling with the power that you have, makes you think differently. And but I think it more begs the question for me, like, what are the alternative ways that could be realized, and how to funnel creativity not only for the artistic creation, but for the process of for the production process. Can we be creative to produce art differently that is not solely dependent on public money, and maintain the level of professionality that comes with the resources that are available through this funding mechanism? And that would be maybe an interesting conversation to held in private. Okay, Daphna, we've been chatting for almost an hour and a half, and I think we've covered a lot of things, even though I feel like that there's still room to speak about maybe like what is artistic integrity, what is the responsibility of an artist, but maybe we will have to bring it into another episode. So before we finish, maybe you can share a little bit of information for people who are curious, where they can reach you, about the performance, where they can see it, and all this good stuff.
Gladly. Yeah, so Rage is going to premiere on the 13th of February, 2025. I don't know when your audience is listening to the podcast. In WUK in Vienna, in the Saal. It's a standing performance. Maybe it's important to say.
Which means?
That it's a concert setting, so you're standing there. There are no seats, basically. So 13th February, 7:30 in WUK, following performances on the 14th and 15th. And you can find out more about my artistic work on my website, which is www.daphnahorenczyk.com.
Yeah, it will be in the show notes.
So, and besides that, I will be teaching in the movement lab the next semester, and then let's see what happens with the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good to have long-term planning and a lot of curiosity for the unexpected nowadays. Thank you.
Thank you
I
very
appreciate
much.
the conversation, and I hope it will resonate with people who are listening. And until the next time, my friend.
Thank you.
If you want to see more precious and insightful moments, make sure to check our short clips playlist. To see longer interviews, check out the full episode playlist just below it. And to be notified for all future videos, click the subscribe button and don't forget to hit the notification bell. See you on the next episode.